everyone, and welcome to the darkest hour. I'm your host, Amanda Jane. Summer is supposed to be a time for escape. Long days, late nights, and trips to places far from the ordinary. But sometimes the places we run to are hiding something. A cabin deep in the woods, a strange figure by the lake, a vacation that doesn't feel like yours alone. Tonight, we're diving into stories where summer turns unsettling, and the most anticipated season of the year becomes something to survive. So, let's get started, shall we? This happened when I was 13, maybe 14. Never really talked about it much, not seriously anyway. Around here, it just turned into one of those weird family stories, ones that people tell when they're drinking too much or try to scare the younger kids. But it wasn't a story. I was there. I saw it. I grew up in Nebraska, not far from Kearney. If you've ever driven through the state, you know that kind of place I mean. Flat, open, long stretches of nothing but sky and crops. Summers were humid, full of bugs. You'd sweat through your clothes before lunch and still get sunburned under a ball cap. Anyway, every summer my cousin Travis and I would spend a couple of weeks at our grandparents' farm. They had a couple 100 acres, mostly corn, and their house was one of those 2-story white ones, with a big porch and peeling paint. No internet, no cable, just radio, books, and our own dumb ideas. That summer was hot, too hot. Even the bugs were quiet by midday, and the corn grew taller than I'd ever seen it. Taller than us, even when we stood on our four-wheeler. Grandpa said the ground was restless. I didn't know what that meant at the time. I thought he was just being weird. But the first night, we noticed the lights. We were out near the back property line, past the grain bins, tossing firecrackers and pretending to be soldiers. And then we saw them. These soft, blue-white glows floating above the corn. Not flashing like fireflies, not even flickering like flames. They moved slow, smooth, like they were weaving between the rows. Travis thought that it was some sort of elevated flashlight, or kids playing with lanterns. I didn't like it. It made the hair on my arm stand up. We ran back to the house, and Grandpa was already on the porch with his boots on, just watching the field. "You boys stay inside tonight," he said, "and close the curtains." We listened. The next day, Travis asked him about the lights, and Grandpa didn't say much, just mumbled something about thin places, how the corn remembers. No clue what that was supposed to mean. That night we stayed up, watching from the second-story window. Around midnight, the lights came back, but there were more this time. 10, maybe 15 of them, moving in patterns, almost like they were dancing. I wanted to wake up Grandpa, but Travis was already sneaking downstairs, said he wanted to see up close. I told him that he was being stupid, but he wouldn't stop. So I followed him. We cut through the back field, careful not to step on the irrigation lines. The lights were still there, pulsing just above the corn. As we got closer, everything got quiet. There was just a faint buzzing in my ears, like when you stand up too fast. And then the corn parted. I swear, it opened up, like something big had moved through it, fast, right in front of us. I turned to Travis, and he was gone. Gone. I called his name. Nothing. Pushed through the stalks. Nothing. Ran back to the house, screaming. Grandpa didn't ask questions. just grabbed his shotgun and a lantern, went into the field alone, came back an hour later, empty-handed. His hands were shaking. His shirt was soaked through with sweat, and he wouldn't meet my eyes. We called the cops, the neighbors. They searched for days. Dogs, helicopters. No signs of Travis. No torn clothing. No footprints. Just vanished. The story in town became that he ran away. But we all knew better. Grandpa had the whole field plowed under by the end of the week. Corn destroyed, topsoil overturned. He never grew anything on that part of the land again. Just let it sit there, bare and dusty, like a scar. Years later, I found something buried under his old toolbox in the barn. It was a photo, yellowed with age. It was from the 60s. 4 kids standing in a cornfield, holding hands, smiling. One of them looked just like Travis. In the background, it's faint, but it's visible. One of those lights. Something happened to me and my sister back in 2016, something that I haven't been able to make sense of. And the older I get, the worse it sits with me. We were driving across country to visit some family in California. Somewhere in Arizona, we got off the interstate to take a back route. We'd read somewhere online that it was more scenic. It was, and also a mistake. It was late afternoon when we realized we were getting low on gas. No towns in sight. GPS kept cutting out. Finally, like a mirage, we saw a little station up ahead. Old school looking place with a faded red awning, plastic dinosaur out front. We pulled in, relieved, and got out to stretch. The air was hot, like standing inside an oven, and it was quiet. No bugs or wind. The only sound was the buzzing from one of the flickering lights above the pumps. That was the first weird thing. The second was the price, $1.09 per gallon. That caught my eye immediately. This was 2016. That price hadn't been real in decades. I figured maybe it was broken. Just an old sign they never updated. Whatever. I went inside to pay. The guy behind the counter looked straight out of a movie. Greased back hair, yellowed undershirt, skin like leather. He didn't say hello, just watched me. Didn't blink much. When I asked if the pumps were working, he nodded and said, "Pump 4. We were at pump 2. I corrected him. He said again, slower, "Pump 4. So I nodded, backed out, moved the car to pump 4. While I was filling up, my sister went inside to use the bathroom. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I went to check on her. The guy behind the counter was still, just standing there. Same position, same expression. I asked if my sister was still in the bathroom. He didn't answer, just smiled. I started pounding on the bathroom door and yelling her name. After a minute, it creaked open. Empty. No window, no other door. I was about to panic when I turned around and saw her standing by the car, totally calm, like nothing had happened. "I've been out here," she said. "You're the one that disappeared." I wanted to leave immediately. We got in the car and drove off fast. But 20 minutes later, we passed the same dinosaur sign, same red awning, same pump 4. We hadn't turned around. We'd looped back. We tried to keep driving. Every time it seemed like we'd pass it again. Daylight didn't even change. GPS was frozen. My phone clock was at 5:32 p.m. Stuck that way for at least an hour. Finally, we pulled over, and both of us just sat there. We didn't speak. We didn't even feel scared anymore. Just tired. I closed my eyes for what felt like a second. When I opened them, it was dark. My sister was asleep. The gas station was gone. We were parked on the side of the road, with nothing around us but open desert. My phone appeared to be working again. 2:13 a.m. We didn't talk the rest of the way to California. Still don't really talk about it now, but sometimes I dream about that place. The flickering light, the dinosaur, the man behind the counter who never blinked. And in the dream, I always go to pump 4, and I never leave. Just stuck there for what feels like forever. Okay, so I'm on my summer break before senior year, and my high school has a swimming pool that opens up to the public every summer. They also have a summer daycare for 1st through 6th grade, and those kids get to swim for 2 hours every morning. I'm one of the lifeguards. I started going in early so I could swim before the kids came. It was nice having the pool to myself. One morning, I dove in off the diving board and got out to jump again. When I came out of the pool and turned back toward the diving board, there was suddenly a little girl at the bottom of the deep end, laying there like a dead fish. She had a pink bathing suit on, long, dark hair. I dove in before I could stop to think about the fact that her presence should have been impossible. She hadn't been there 5 seconds before, and the pool gate was locked. But when I opened my eyes underwater, I didn't see the kid anymore. I stayed down there for as long as I could, but there was nothing and no one on the bottom. I thought maybe they got out on their own because where else could they be? But I was still alone when I resurfaced. The gate was still locked. The kid had just disappeared. I didn't imagine it. I didn't mistake something else for a kid. She was there. When the daycare kids showed up, I talked to one of their teachers. She's an older woman who's been working at the school for something like 30 years. I told her what happened, and she got really upset. She flat out refused to listen to anything about it at all. Later that week, I ran into the vice principal in the office. He's worked there for a really long time. I tried telling him about the little girl, but he got mad and cut me off. He said every time one of the students finds out about the little girl who drowned in our pool back in the 80s, word spreads and people start making up ghost stories. He said one student even pretended that someone jumped on their back and pulled them underwater. A lifeguard had to pull them out, but the student was flailing so hard they busted the lifeguard's nose in the process. No one else had been anywhere near that part of the pool when it all happened. But I hadn't known anything about the little girl who drowned. I had just saw her one day. So what if all those other stories were true too? What if that other kid really did get pulled under by a ghost? I don't want any part of that. I'm going to finish out the summer, but this will be my last lifeguarding gig. There's just no way I want to deal with any of this long term. This was senior year, end of May, high school almost over. That weird limbo where everyone thinks they're invincible and nothing bad can happen before graduation. There were 6 of us who went to the beach that night. A hidden spot off the highway, one of those places that only the locals know about. Sand, seagrass, some washed up driftwood, and a perfect view. Someone brought booze, someone else brought music, and one of the girls, Kendra, brought a Ouija board. It was one of those old ones, not the cheap plastic or cardboard kind. It looked like it had a history. She said that she found it in her grandma's attic, thought it would be funny to use it at the beach. It wasn't funny. We lit a fire, passed the bottle, laughed too loud, and around midnight, she laid it out on a flat rock near the pit. We were drunk enough to try it, sober enough to still feel uneasy. She led the session, said you had to ask permission, say goodbye, all the usual stuff. We started asking the obvious, dumb questions. Is anyone there? What's your name? How did you die? Nothing happened at first. Then the planchette moved, just a little. We all swore we weren't doing it. I thought someone was screwing around, but it kept moving. Slow. It spelled, I did not. We asked, did not what? It spelled, drown. Kendra laughed. Oh, spooky. But her voice cracked. The wind picked up, the fire sputtered, and then the board went still. It stopped moving. The planchette froze. Kendra reached to say goodbye, but it jerked under her finger and flew into the sand. She screamed. We thought it was part of the act, until she started clawing at her throat, like she couldn't breathe. We pulled her away, dumped water on her, tried everything. She gasped and finally snapped out of it. She said it felt like someone had held her head underwater. But the board, it was gone. We all saw where it landed, but it wasn't there. No planchette, no wood, like it had sunk into the sand. Well, we left after that. I remember the next day that we were at school, Kendra acted like she didn't recognize anyone. It was weird. She didn't sit with us, talk to us, wasn't returning messages. She came to graduation, but, again, didn't sit with us. The last time that I saw her was at a gas station, the summer after freshman year of college. She looked burnt out, staring out at the rain. I asked her how she was doing. She just said, goodbye, shook her head and walked out into the storm, into her car. And then she was gone. And so was I. I haven't been back there since. Coming up on 13 years. And yeah, I haven't touched a Ouija board since. I did have something weird happen during a summer trip I took with some college friends. We rented this little house in a beach town, not a touristy place, more like a locals-only kind of vibe. It was more than affordable, and the ideal place for a week of drinking, laying in the sun, and pretending that we weren't about to graduate college with zero life plans. The house was maybe 3 blocks from the water, and every night we'd walk down to the beach after dinner. There was this long wooden pier. It stretched way out into the ocean, and we'd sit at the end, smoke, talk about dumb stuff, and listen to the waves. The first time I saw him, the man on the pier, I thought he was just some old guy doing the same thing that we were. He was standing alone, maybe 15 feet away from us, back turned, looking out at the water. Long coat, hands in his pockets, didn't move. I figured he was being polite, giving us space. When we got up to leave, I glanced back and he was still there. The next night, same thing. This time he was already on the pier when we arrived. Same spot, same posture, just standing like a statue. Nobody else mentioned him, so I didn't either. Maybe I didn't want to sound paranoid. but something about the way he stood there. It was off, different, like he wasn't looking at the water, more like he was waiting for something in it. By the third night, I was now watching for him. We got to the pier just after sundown, and sure enough, there he was. Same distance from us, same coat, even though it was easily 80 degrees. My buddy Joel cracked a joke about creepy sea ghosts, and the others were laughing. But when I said, like that guy down there, they all looked at me like I'd grown another head. "There's nobody down there," one of them said. "Are you good?" I walked a little closer to prove it, got maybe 6 feet away before something just shifted. The air got heavy, my ears popped. I swear I smelled salt or something like copper. Blood, maybe. I blinked, and he was gone. Just gone. I was completely convinced that I had seen a ghost. None of my friends wanted anything to do with what I was saying, but the next day, I asked the guy running the bait shop if there were any local legends about someone dying on the pier. I figured maybe there was a fisherman who drowned or something. He got quiet. He just said, "Some folks say they see things out there, if that's what you're talking about, when the tide's just right. I wouldn't go looking for them, though. Not if I were you." That night, I stayed behind while the others went to the beach. I couldn't explain why, but I had this awful feeling, like if I went back out there, something would see me back. I never got any confirmation of old history or local legends, but the fact that others had seen stuff out there, that was kind of enough for me. I told my friends about the conversation, but no one seemed to believe me or care. But I know what I saw. Okay, so I don't usually talk about this stuff because it sounds like one of those made-up campfire stories, but this really happened, and this seems like a decent place to share it. I was 17, and my family did this cross-state road trip every summer to bond, argue over snacks, and listen to my dad snore in a tent. This one year, we were headed through Missouri. My mom found this quiet little campground online, dirt cheap, right by a lake, tucked into the woods. I won't name it, but it had maybe 4 reviews in a website that looked like it hadn't been updated since 2002. The weirdness started on the drive in. The road curved off the main highway, and then the trees just sort of swallowed us. It felt heavy, not peaceful heavy, like you're being watched heavy. We passed this rusted sign that said, "Fairyland Park, closed." And I remember thinking, what the hell is Fairyland Park? Turns out this whole campground was built on top of what used to be a little amusement park from the 50s. They didn't even try to hide it. There were old archways with vines growing through them, and we passed what looked like the remains of a tilt-a-whirl, half submerged in a marshy part of the woods. I thought it was kind of cool, at first. That night, we set up our tents, made s'mores, pretty typical. Around 11 p.m., my parents went to bed. I sat out by the fire a little bit longer, and that's when I heard music. It was faint but unmistakable, old-timey carnival music. Think merry-go-round, but off somehow, slower than it should have been. I turned to look behind me, and I swear to God, I saw this little flickering light weaving between the trees. Just for a second, I saw someone walking, only they didn't look right. Their arms were awkwardly long, and they just kinda hovered more than walked. I didn't say anything the next morning. Figured I had to have been tired. Except my dad woke up with a burn on his hand, like a full-on blistered welt across his palm. He said that he must have touched the coals or something, but the fire was out cold when we went to bed. The second night, it got worse. I woke up to laughter, children's laughter, but there were no other kids at the campground. I got out of the tent. I saw lights, string lights from a festival, glowing way out in the woods. And I swear, I heard the jingling of ride chains. I heard someone whisper right next to my ear, a woman's voice. "It's almost time." I don't remember running, but I woke up in the front seat of our car, locked inside and shaking like hell. The inside of the windshield had condensation on it, like someone had been breathing against the glass. We left before sunrise. We didn't even pack everything. Later that year, I looked up Fairyland Park. I found one article. The place had burned down in the 70s, an electrical fire during a school event. Multiple kids died, some adults too. One ride operator was found, charred, still clutching the lever of a carousel. We didn't see any animals that whole trip. No birds even. Don't even know if we saw any bugs. And that was the last time that Mom was allowed to pick a place for us to camp. And I guess if you're ever on a family road trip and you see a campground that's built on an old park, keep driving. Some places aren't meant to come back to life. This happened the summer after 8th grade. I haven't told many people about it, mostly because it still messes with me when I think about it too hard. Do you ever have something like that? Where it felt off in the moment, but then later, after you've had time to replay it 1,000 times, it feels way worse. That's this story. There was this summer camp that my friends and I went to every year in the Ozarks. Typical stuff. Archery, hiking, crafts, canoeing, that kind of thing. The main attraction was the lake. It was massive, glassy, and deep as hell. Every day we'd swim and kayak and do all the dumb things that kids do. Except that year, something was different. On the first day, they told us that the lake was off limits. No swimming, no boats, nothing. They blamed it on a bacterial bloom or some environmental issue, but even at 13, I could tell they were lying. The counselors avoided answering questions, and they posted these weird handmade signs on all of the trails leading down to the water. "Do not approach after dark." All caps, exclamation points. Naturally, we were idiots and took that as a dare. There were 5 of us who snuck out that night. We waited until after lights out, and then cut through the woods with flashlights and towels. It was stupid, I know, but it was hot, and we just wanted to swim once before the week ended. We made it to the lake around midnight. It was quiet. The water looked black, like oil, just sitting there without a single ripple. One of the guys, Josh, cracked a joke about how it felt like we were breaking into a graveyard, and I laughed, but it stuck with me. We went in anyway. I stayed close to the shore, but the other 4 swam out farther. They were trying to outdo each other, splashing around, seeing who could hold their breath the longest. It was dark enough that they disappeared quickly into the middle of the lake. And then I heard this splash. Not a small one, huge, like someone doing a cannonball off a dock. But we were the only ones out there. I shined my flashlight across the water, caught a glimpse of something moving, big, no shape, just this ripple that moved in a perfect arch, fast and wide. I thought maybe a deer had come down to drink or something, but then I heard Logan scream. It wasn't playful. It was blood-curdling. By the time we pulled him out of the water, he was shaking so hard he couldn't talk at first. He had scratches down his side, and one of his shoes was missing. We asked him what happened, and he just kept repeating, "It touched me. It touched me. He wouldn't go back into the cabin. Slept in the mess hall with the lights on, curled up in a ball. The next morning, the staff told us that Logan had gone home sick, except we found his bunk untouched. Same clothes, same shoes. He hadn't taken anything. It was like he had vanished. Years later, one of the guys who was there that night told me that he'd gotten an email from Logan's mom. She said that they never came to pick him up. The camp called, said that he'd already been picked up. Here's the part that I think is crazy. A few summers ago, I was scrolling through local forums, looking for information on a hiking trail near that area, and I saw a comment thread about the camp. Someone said the lake was drained after a drought. They found bones in the mud, not a body. Bones, small ones, multiple sets, and no one ever talked about it. I don't swim in lakes anymore. Maybe 10 years ago, give or take, I was 22, freshly out of college, and still in that phase where all of your friends think that renting a giant cabin in the middle of nowhere is a good idea. There were 8 of us total, some from high school, some from college, all trying to pretend like we hadn't grown apart yet. We split the cost of this weird but cheap rental. It was in the Catskills. It looked rustic in the listing photos, but had enough beds, a fire pit, a hot tub. We figured it was perfect. There was a door in the hallway that was padlocked shut. I'm talking big industrial-style lock, and a do not open sign duct taped to it. The listing hadn't mentioned a basement at all. When we asked the rental manager, she said that it was for storage, and that it must stay closed. Okay, fine. Creepy, but whatever. First night, we partied like idiots. Loud music, drinking games, the usual. But in the middle of the first night, we heard banging. Not like someone knocking, like someone slamming their body against a wall. Deep, rhythmic thuds coming from the hallway. We checked the whole house, didn't find anything. My friend Justin made a joke about something trying to get out of the basement, but his laugh was kind of shaky. Everyone else pretended not to notice. And then the next night, it got colder, like unnaturally cold. We were wearing our jackets inside. The thermostat was set to 73, but the place felt like a meat locker. We blamed the draft until we saw our breath starting to fog in the hallway, right in front of that door. And that's when the whispering started. I wasn't the first one to hear it, but my friend Melanie said that she'd woken up to the sound of someone talking through the floorboards. A woman's voice, muffled but close, repeating something. Said it sounded like, "Let me finish it." We all brushed it off. Maybe she dreamed it. Maybe the place had rats. We joked about haunted basements and passed the bottle around. But on the third night, someone unlocked the door. We don't know who. The padlock was on the floor, open. No one admitted to touching it. I was sure that we didn't even have the key. The basement was pitch black. No light switch that we could find. Just stairs going down into total dark. And this awful, rotten smell. Like dirt and iron and mold, all mixed together. We should have closed the door or walked away. But Justin, of course, he had to go down there. Said that he was going to prove there was nothing. He went down there with a flashlight and disappeared for maybe 3 minutes. Came back, pale, sweaty, not saying a word. Wouldn't tell us what he saw, wouldn't answer questions, just sat outside and chain smoked in the cold. After that, it seemed like things got worse. He stopped sleeping, started muttering to himself in a voice that didn't sound like his. We found him in the kitchen one morning with a fork in his hand, carving something into the table. He didn't even realize he was doing it. The rest of us, we left that night. Didn't even finish out the weekend. But Justin, he wouldn't come with us. He insisted that he was fine. He was borderline obsessed with that basement. Said that he had work to do. For a while after that, he ghosted all of us. Didn't answer texts, calls, nothing. It was like he dropped off the planet. At first we were trying to get in touch with him regarding damage charges, but then we were just genuinely worried. Some of us were able to confirm that he was alive, but I guess just not talking to us. We told ourselves that he was going through something, that he needed space. A few weeks later, he came back, showed up in our group chat like nothing had happened, dropping memes, making plans. When we finally got him on the phone, he said that he wasn't sure what was going on during that time. Said things had gotten foggy, that he hadn't felt like himself. I feel better now, he told me. It's weird. I don't even remember what I saw down there, or why I stayed. I didn't press him. No one did, really. It was easier not to. We don't really talk about that trip anymore. Not as a group. I mean, only a few of us stay in touch anyway. But there's this quiet agreement that whatever happened in that house, we just leave it alone. This happened in the summer of 2022, but I swear, part of me is still floating out there. I took a small fishing boat out on Lake Powell, solo. Not uncommon for me. I've always been the type who enjoys the silence. No phones, no people, just water and time. I left before sunrise with a cooler, a backup battery for the trolling motor, and my usual emergency gear. But I made a mistake. A few, actually. First, I didn't check the forecast close enough. Just glanced at it. Sunny, calm, low wind. Fine. Second, I took a rental boat with a radio that I'd never tested. And third, I ignored how fast clouds were moving in around 3 p.m. I was deep into one of the side channels when the storm rolled in, and it rolled in fast. 1 minute the water was glass. The next, it looked like a churning nightmare. Waves started rocking the boat. The sky went black, like someone cut the power, and the wind turned vicious. I pulled an anchor and I tried to make it back to the launch ramp, but visibility was shot. I had no idea which way I was actually facing. I grabbed the radio. Dead. Not low battery, just dead. Wouldn't even light up. I felt real fear set in. Not the jolt of adrenaline kind, but the quiet kind. The kind that makes your stomach spread outward, slow, cold. I still had GPS on my phone, but guess what? No service in that part of the lake. I could see the map, sure, but with the storm overhead, no signal meant no real-time location. Just a blinking dot stuck in place. And then the light started fading. Storm clouds turned the afternoon into night. I tried to steer using landmarks, but the cliffs and canyons all looked the same. Just jagged silhouettes against a darkening sky. I couldn't tell if I was going in circles or further out. Eventually the wind died down, but so did the battery on the trolling motor. I was drifting now. No engine, no anchor. No noise except the soft slap of water against the hull. I kept thinking about how big that lake is, how deep, how empty. The silence was actually suffocating. Even the birds had left me. I tried yelling once, just to hear something. My own voice came back weird, flat, like it didn't belong in that space. As night fell, I started to worry about hypothermia. I had water, but no food, no extra layers, just a thin hoodie with a rain shell that was already soaked through. The temperature dropped fast. I curled up at the bottom of the boat, trying to conserve the heat. Time blurred. I don't know how long I laid there. Then I saw a light, way off in the distance. Just a faint yellow glow, moving slowly between the canyon walls. I sat up and started flashing the tiny light on my keychain. On, off, over and over. It was all I had left. I thought maybe it was a ranger or a houseboat. I didn't even care at that point. I just needed someone to see me. Whoever it was, they saw me. Turned out to be a fisherman coming in late who happened to notice something bobbing in the dark where it shouldn't be. He towed me back in. We didn't talk much. I think he could see it on my face, how close it had gotten to being something else, something final. Now, I don't go without a working VHF radio, backup batteries, signal flares, 2 phones and waterproof bags, you name it. Because the lake doesn't really care how experienced you are. It doesn't care how much time you've spent out there. The lake just is. And if it decides to keep you, it won't make a sound. After my senior year of high school, I took an apprenticeship at a tattoo shop for the summer. When I called to ask about it, a guy named Jolly answered the phone, though he didn't sound very jolly at all. Most of the apprenticeship involved cleaning the shop, answering the phones, and practicing pulling my lines on fake skin. I'm pretty sure I tattooed over 1 million roses of all different styles and sizes. Jolly also was a lot nicer in person. Besides customers, he was usually the only one opening and closing the shop every day, so he was pretty stoked to have someone helping him, keeping him company. And to the man's credit, he didn't once try to get creepy with me. Jolly was always respectful, even threatened some guy who was coming in to get a chest piece done. It was going to be a $2,000 tattoo, one that Jolly tossed out of his shop to protect me from his harassment. That's why I never felt unsafe when he and I would be the only ones at the shop, hanging out after hours. While he looked through the bills and separated little piles of cash for them, I'd either be picking up or practicing. On a few of those kinds of nights, though, something would happen that really filled the remaining nights that I'd spend there with anxiety. It sank in my soul every time the sun set. Jolly wasn't too happy about the circumstances either, but he was able to maintain his composure way better than I could back then. We would hear the front door buzzer activate all the time, like a customer had walked in, but the shop would be empty when one of us would go check it out. A few times it happened while I was sitting behind the reception desk. I'd see the door physically open. There was never any winds or drafts pushing the air around inside. Jolly had already gone through all of the experiments trying to figure out why the anomaly would happen so often but sporadically, and only after the sun had set. That was just plain weird on its own, but what I thought was more unnerving about the whole thing was that the sensor that activated the bell was mounted just inside of the doorway, and the shop doors open out, meaning the door itself wasn't what would set it off. Someone would have to cross the threshold of the doorway to make it ding. But time and time again, the bell would sound and no one would be present. Jolly shared other little things that he'd seen happen around the shop since he bought the place. He had a record player in the corner that he'd rotate albums on throughout the day. He had a wall full of vinyls, a true collector, and his collection was extensive, but the only ones that he'd spin were old blues or jazz artists, saying that that was the only type of music that seemed to keep the place calm, settled. Any other type of music, he noticed it would stir up activity in the shop, and he didn't like dealing with that. Jolly didn't outright say that the building was haunted, but he also thought that talking about it could make it act up. It was part superstition and part first-hand experience that he kept these rules in the shop. Ignore the oddities, clean up anything that may have spilled over, and return to the task at hand. During the times that Jolly wasn't tattooing a customer, he was always up moving around, tinkering with things, really focusing on me with the fundamentals, more than he needed to. I was grateful to have so much of his attention to my progress, but it was probably the result of his insistence on staying mentally and physically distracted, trying to be too busy to bother. Not by me, but by the spirits, I guess. Even the age gap we shared, I tried to show empathy, told him something like how I could understand how he was going about it. Weirdly, the goal of being distracted from a scary world is what got me into drawing. Since I was young, art had always been there for me. It was my companion when I was lonely, the therapist I communicated my feelings to. Sometimes, staying distracted is all you can do. I started to get choked up at the end of telling him this, and I remember Jolly's expression never changing. Our age gap apparently was too wide for him to return the empathetic gesture. Again, Jolly wasn't a mean guy. He was, however, a grizzled, old Algerian biker guy with a bunch of sailor tattoos that he got from a lifetime of service in the military. He probably stopped feeling real human feelings long before I met him. I don't know how I expected him to react, and I guess I shouldn't have been surprised when he said, "What? I'm not a sad baby. I'm angry these duppies keep messing with the shop." If it's the first time you've heard that word, it sounds racist, doesn't it? It made me pause for a second, too, when I heard him yell it. I asked, "Duppies? Doopies?" And he goes, "Booze. People without a body." In West Africa, a duppy is what they call a ghost. Jolly never acted upset or scared, but the consistent bad juju he'd been dealing with since he'd opened the shop, it had really started to take a toll on him. I think he was embarrassed, too. He felt bad that it was making me nervous, and so now the disturbances were progressively making him more upset. The uptick in his anger seemed to do exactly what he didn't want it to do, and that was to increase the energy. He said that they'd eat negative energy. It's food to them. If that's true, Jolly was hosting a buffet almost every night in the month of August. Business wasn't great either. His tattoo shop was pretty far off the main road, so he hardly got any walk-in traffic. Only a handful when I was there. People asking for small American traditionals that they'd pick off the wall or names. These tattoos didn't make him a lot of money. Unfortunately, I think I met Jolly at a low point in his life. If there was any peace still left inside, the constant stress and gloom had calcified it. You could tell the fake smile he wore. It no longer did what he thought it did. His smile looked more like a wince while he grinded his teeth. The more time we spent together, the more he felt comfortable showing his true feelings. My apprenticeship was ending at the end of August anyway, and so I didn't let his moods affect me. Every time I tried to go in there with a goal to soak up as much hands-on knowledge as I could, while simultaneously staying out of the way, and I did a relatively successful job at that. But I don't think that anything could have prepared us for what was to be my unofficial last day. Both of us were astutely aware of the growing tension inside the brick building. I think Jolly started associating me with the heightened energy, because as I did my best to stay out of his way, anything that would go wrong in the shop, he started blaming on me. I reminded him that his shop had been having problems well before I was there, and he would say, "Not like this. It wasn't like this until you came around." It hurt my feelings, and one night, a week shy of completing my apprenticeship, there was still a few hours left in the evening. Jolly had just finished up a client, and after they'd left, I was sanitizing the station and equipment. Jolly took off his gloves and went out back to smoke. I have my head down, focused on wiping and spritzing a vintage repurposed dentist chair, while I hear the front door slide open and the sensor chimed. I looked up, and standing in the doorway was a man with long gray dreadlocks. They reached past his shoulders. He was an elderly man, but he still looked to be in good health. He wore black pants with a silver wallet chain that hung low on his leg. He stepped maybe 3 feet inside and asked if Jolly was around. I told him he'd just stepped out, but he'll be back in a second. I asked if he wanted to schedule an appointment. I thought while we waited for Jolly, I could check the calendar for available dates. Though before retrieving the book with Jolly's schedule, I knew it was most likely going to be wide open, but I didn't want the customer to know that. For some reason, I thought that it would just look better as a business if it looked like you had something going on. It felt unprofessional to say, any day, any time, we'll be open, without even glancing at a calendar. I'm walking back toward the desk as I'm asking him this, and by the time I'm able to grab the book and pretend to flip through it, I'm still waiting for his reply, so I look up at him, but the shop is empty again. I don't think much of it. Maybe the guy changed his mind. I'd seen it happen before during my time there. Someone comes in, hears the whirl of needles, panics, and quickly reconsiders. A few minutes later, Jolly strolls back in. I tell him that someone came in asking for him, but I didn't get his name. He asks what they looked like, and I describe the man and say he had the same kind of tattoos that you do. There was one in particular that I described what it was and its placement because it was a very distinguishing tattoo on the side of his neck. It was an old Vegas slot machine, with 3 of the 4 spinning things having come to rest, but the first is still spinning. The ones that have stopped say UCK, and the one that's still spinning at the front is between the letters L and F. I thought it was clever when I saw it. My description of the man and his tattoo made Jolly say, What? Where did he go? I say he left just a little bit ago, and that sends Jolly running out the front doors and around the store searching for this person. When he came back into the store, he was out of breath, asked if I told the man that he was there. I say yes, thinking that this is a good thing, but it's seemingly like an act of betrayal. Jolly starts locking all of the doors, telling me to pull the window shades down because now I'm in danger too. Hearing him say that in his gruff accent sends a burst of fright through my body. Thinking the windows were about to be blown out by gunfire or something, I get on my hands and knees and crawled into the back area. Eventually, Jolly met me back there with my purse and my coat, handing them to me, telling me to leave immediately. I started crying, begging him not to throw me out there. I was terrified he was going to show up before I could make it to my car. Jolly tossed my stuff on the table next to me and then told me that I wasn't safe where I was anymore, but I was still too afraid to move. I was crying hysterically, but as quiet as I could, whisper screaming at him to please let me stay. Then he raised his voice over my tearful hiss and tried to explain to me in the best way that he could why it was better that I left. The man that I'd met was named Calvin Northman. He and Jolly were shipmates, but not in the military. Jolly used to own a fishing boat that he and 3 other men worked on. Him, Calvin, and 2 other guys. Something happens to Calvin on one of their fishing trips. He was accused of stealing by one of the other men. Things get out of hand, and Calvin gets ran through with a harpoon, in the front, out the back. They're miles from land, and as the 3rd guy is trying to keep Calvin conscious, the guy that did the impaling has his hands on his head, staring down at the blood and seawater washing over his feet. And he allows what he's done to sink in. When it does, in another act of sudden brutality, the man grabbed onto the metal chains of one of the big hooks that they use to pull the nets of fish in. It's not too sharp, but the end was still at a pointed tip. He used the metal chains and hoisted himself up, climbing the lever until he was just over the water. and far enough that his head was above the hook, and then he could let go of the chain. The hook went through the soft part of his jaw, and his body swung over the waves. Jolly and the other man could only watch in horror as their comrade hanging with the hook through his face didn't die instantly. Instead, they were forced to listen to his gurgled, agonizing screams echo off the metal as he hung off the side of the boat. Then, Jolly described how the man used his hands to almost push the hook into his head, like he was pushing his body weight down until the hook went through enough skin for him to detach and fall into the ocean. With Calvin still barely alive, Jolly keeps the boat pushing forward, but Calvin dies before they can get there. I said, "Died?" "No, I swear he was right there," pointing at the entrance of the shop. He said that Calvin was angry that they couldn't save him, that they didn't protect him while he was alive. He came to Jolly in dreams. The night after his death was the first time he'd seen him, and ever since, Jolly had been living with a sense of unrest every day afterward, fearful that that would be the day Calvin took his vengeance. Adding, even the crewmate that was down there the whole time trying to save Calvin, he wasn't spared. He died a year later. A 34-year-old man, strong, healthy, died of a heart attack. Jolly said the only way a man like that could die that way is if he was scared to death. After saying all of this, Jolly again asks, demands, that I get my stuff and that I go. I could hear the sincerity in his voice. He really didn't want whatever was coming for him to also come after me. I did as he begged me to do, leave and never come back. When he'd said it, I thought, no way. Even if I do leave, I'm coming back. But I never went back to the shop. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't collect my final drawings or thank Jolly for everything he taught me. I just left. And for a long time, I felt guilty about that. I still do sometimes. But some things are bigger than closure. I don't know if Calvin ever came back again after that night, or if Jolly's still in that shop spinning records, waiting for the next door chime. I only know that when I think about that summer, I don't remember the flash of the machines or the smell of the green soap. I remember the sound of that bell, echoing through an empty room. And I remember the way Jolly looked at me, like he already knew how his story ended. Well, friends, it appears we've reached the end of tonight's episode. Thanks for joining me. Whether it's your first time or you're a regular, your support means the world. We've got brand new episodes every Friday night, and keep those eyes open for those deep sleep videos. And of course, subscribe, tap the bell, and you'll never miss a thing. Special thanks to the Darkest Hour channel members, Lori TESDAHL, Sarah Marie, Robert Bailey, T. COLTDADDY Eagle, Mallory Dominguez, KARI WATKINS, PILAR TREDEN WIXSON, Larry Hill, RIPLEY, JOJO STARCHER, Mary Patrick, Debbie LAFRENIERE, Julie BOURDELAIS, Jennifer BECK, MARINA LACHNER, Make Hamilton Home, Evan Pratt, Mary Hineline, Katharine Yes.ImtherealKatie Isabelle, Land Shark, Danielle Hecht, Veronica Mckiernan, Keziah Pietersen, Amber Baker, Khris Lauzon, Kara Geos, Marvin Allen, ForgottenruinsTV, Raven Wolf, Carlos, and Stacia Gillette. Big thanks to those who shared their stories, and a huge shout out to all of our patrons, whom we appreciate so very much. Tracy S., Mary H., Tanya F., Tamra K., Monica L., Zoe Watt, Shelley B., Donald C., Marion T., Rat Girl, Alicia S., Aaron G., Nikki H., Mr. Revenant, Naz K., Brendan G., Paul T., Nicholas C., Tony P., Lizanne, Arlene F., Adrian, T.F. Parham, Jason G., Lori T., and Bobo Jenkins. If you want to support The Darkest Hour in other ways, consider joining our Patreon or becoming a channel member. Check out patreon.com/thedarkesthour or click the link in the description to learn more. Do you have stories like these? I'd love to share them. Send them to me, Amanda, darkesthour@gmail.com, or on the Darkest Hour subreddit, The Darkest Hour, YT. Stay spooky.